So yeah, my last topics pretty much bipartisan background checks on all firearm sales, an assault weapons ban in the Senate, and regulation of marijuana like alcohol act.
Ooh, I mean,
Okay.
probably the one that would be more entertaining would be the gun one, but I'd honestly much rather talk. And they gave it HR 420. I want to talk about that.
I I was so happy when I saw that too.
I really want to talk about that. At living in a state that just legalized marijuana, I definitely want to talk about that.
FYI, if your state doesn't have it legal, it probably is right now because right now I think they're basing marijuana charges based on the percentage of THC, if I remember correctly.
I think in Indiana it's just banned outright.
I
And
know in Texas they're basing it on like percentages and whatever, so people who have marijuana don't just automatically get arrested. They have
and
like the cops somehow have to figure out how to test the actual marijuana and see if it's to a certain percentage,
in
even
Michigan
though
is
Texas
it's
hasn't legalized it.
in Michigan it's not really like that. I mean, we don't have the marketplace set up. They said minimum 2 years before we have the marketplace for that. So we're talking about like buying next year, this time next year, we'll probably have it fully legalized. But the way it's set up now is people are allowed to privately, grow it themselves, but they're not allowed to sell it because there's no marketplace and it needs to be federally regulated. But there's a loophole there where if someone gifts it to somebody, and they unrelated gift them the money, that's illegal. They
Yeah.
just can't say it's for that. They can't legally sell it. Um, as far as how much THC is in them, I haven't seen anything about regulating that, but that might come out when the marketplace comes out.
Okay. Again,
Sorry, I was just going to say for completeness, it's completely illegal in my country, in the United Kingdom, mostly because our government consists mostly of brainless people who.
Christians, right?
Pardon?
It just seems like most of your laws when it comes to morality, just the stereotypical things I would imagine a Christian would vote on, like trying to limit porn and not allowing certain kind of drugs and stuff like that.
Now, to be honest, that's not really it. People in England are pretty not very religious. I'm not going to say that they're atheists. They're just mostly apathetic about this.
So I don't.
It's kind of like you ask people, what religion are you? They'll probably just say like Christian, but that's just because they remember going to church once a couple of years ago. Uh,
So where are those moral things coming in from then?
Conservative needs to. It's to do with the Conservative Party and the need to basically try and control all of these different things. It's kind of like morality policing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's tied to religion as such.
At least on the right here, when it comes to Republican Party, most of our people come from like the Christian conservatives.
I
Yeah,
think
Trump
maybe some of the
overwhelmingly got support from evangelical election.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they'd
That's
vote
what I
for
can
a
say.
tomato. They'd
For
vote
all the
for a tomato
people,
if it was ran as a Republican.
yeah, for all the people saying that they want Trump to die and all this, I'm just gonna let you know that Pence gets in there. A lot of things are gonna get bad when it comes to moral.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't. I'm
that's the
definitely
reason I
not
don't
on
want
that
Trump
side at all.
impeached.
Well, I
think
mean,
just
well, that's a whole different conversation. I recognize that he won't. Just to get it out there, I recognize that he won't actually be impeached because the Senate is the way it is. There's no way they're going to vote for him. But I don't
Yeah.
see the danger in having an investigation to at least show, and especially since the biggest problem that we have with Trump is just how rapid fire he is when he's not pumping out thing after thing, day after day, when he's distracted by something like, oh, I don't know, an impeachment investigation, things like sticking into his finances, which, God, I really wish the Mueller report, Mueller investigation would have extended into, but it wasn't. It was very limited. Um, I think that's a net benefit.
Well, I'll tell you, like on the right, at least for me, I know a lot of people don't like the Democrats, but I'm just gonna say, like for me, I don't like that because I think that just waste everybody's time, including the Democrats that could be spending on making bills.
It
At the
was
same,
not a waste of time.
Yeah. I mean,
So
because
Sorry, finish your point. I'm sorry. I just have to speak up after that. It was not a waste of time at all.
so what did the Democrats gain from it? Because it seems like the only thing that really happened is we got a bunch of cringy news articles about, he's going to get impeached and then nothing really happens.
Well,
Yeah,
Rachel Maddow helped
wasn't
to.
it 36 arrests from this investigation?
yeah,
No,
Yeah,
but
that's pretty good.
several guilty pleas. I mean, we found out that through this investigation that his his campaign, one of his many campaign heads was illegally taking money from foreign governments and wasn't reporting it, and then lying about it. Basically had like a proto racketeering organization going around. We found out that the national security advisor was previously hired by Turkey to kidnap somebody in the United States and take him back to Turkey so that he could be executed. We learned an absolute lot, and I think that's very beneficial. I wasn't a total believer in Russia hacked the election. I totally am not that. Like I'm not crazy about that. I did not believe he was a Putin puppet. I believed it was a business deal, and that's largely what it turned out to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm saying like an impeachment investigation is what I'm talking about, and how that would waste everybody's time.
I really don't think it would. I mean, finding it, there's
So
a
you
reason
already
this
admitted
man
that-
will still 3 years later will not show his tax returns,
Yeah, I mean, I think he should, but again,
and he's not
you've
going
already
to.
admitted that the
He
impeachment
won't.
investigation would go nowhere, right? Like it won't actually go through because of the Senate, right?
That doesn't mean that an investigation is a waste of time.
Agreed.
Finding out information is never a waste of time.
I mean, I don't know. I'm really based on what I want to do, based on pragmatic ideas. Like, if I feel like we can't get something done, I don't think we should waste the time trying.
But yeah, to
Yeah,
go back to, I guess to go back to the weed topic, if you want to do that, I can say something about that.
Sure. what'd you
Scorpion
say?
King, I have no idea
Well,
what you're
I'm
saying
in a
right
country
now.
at the
I
moment
feel like
that
that's a
has very
song.
strong prohibition on the use of marijuana, and I say strong in a legal sense, because the government has cut money to police massively, so a lot of police forces just can't be asked to prosecute this anymore or to investigate it. But still, at least nominally, the penalties for doing this are still quite severe. And at the same time, I've also lived in the Netherlands, which is a country that is well known for having legalized cannabis. Though
Mhm.
in the Netherlands, it's not truly legalized. It's kind of like a half and half. It's a bit complicated to explain. Basically, like possession is allowed, but selling it is kind of not allowed. But it is allowed so long as you sell it in a certain place. It's a bit weird. But the point is that in the Netherlands, getting hold of marijuana is not hard. Like, I'd walk to my university and just walk down the street, walk past the cafe, and it fucking stank, honestly. It is the worst smell in the world.
It's really specifically in Amsterdam, isn't it? Where it's 100%
no,
legal.
no, it's not. It's nationwide.
Really?
Some cities, some cities near the borders, don't give licenses to cafes to open up because they don't want tourists coming in from like Germany or France to come and get their weed or whatever. But that's like a local decision. But
Okay.
it's not just in Amsterdam. But anyway,
That's interesting.
in the UK we've got a real problem with drugs, and what I mean by that is that, especially with austerity and with all the people who have been basically forced onto the street because they can't afford to live anywhere else, they've turned massively to drugs, and I see this all the time when I go anywhere outside or on the rare occasions that I leave the house to go shopping. You see a lot of people, and what is I don't know if you got a specific name for it in the US, but we call it spice. It's like a synthetic sort of cannabis drug. It's the most popular one amongst people, like homeless people in the UK.
I know
And
there's DMT and sativa. I'm not like all caught up in the weed argument. Like I've smoked pot. The first time I smoked pot was when I was like 23. So,
Yeah.
I'm not caught up on all that, but I do hear some things about like how DMT is a synthetic form of marijuana, and also sativa is.
It's not bad because it's synthetic. I'll just get to the reasons why it's bad though. Um, just to give a bit of context, previously it was quite common for people to buy what were called like legal highs. These were kind of like things that had one purpose that was a bit obscure, but then you take them because they make you high anyway. There was also kind of like chemicals that people would make that they could then sell because they hadn't specifically been made illegal yet. Because obviously it takes the government time to say what is and what isn't illegal. So a bunch of shops are selling these synthetic highs, and they were being made by they were made by like companies and stuff like that. So they're made by proper manufacturers, these drugs. Because if the company is able to make it, then no one's going to buy it off the crazy guy down the street who's wearing like a tinfoil hat and throwing bricks at people.
I don't know. This sounds like that dude knows how to party.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's more expensive though, right, the legal one, it's safer. You get the legal one. So that's what they did. But then our government, in its very wise decision, decided that they needed to stamp this out. They didn't want people to be able to buy illegal highs because they were circumventing the law. So they passed what has to be the worst law that has ever been created. And this was called the Psychoactive Substances Act. And the reason I say it was the worst law in the world was because they were like, we can't ban these chemicals as they're being made because we don't know what they're called until we find out about them. So let's just ban anything that changes your mind in any way.
Caffeine.
No,
I'm
not
sorry,
kidding.
what?
Anything that affects your emotional state. I'm not.
I'm guessing
So-
not alcohol.
Wait.
They had to do this, and then they made a big list of exceptions.
Okay,
Of course.
I'm assuming people are still getting sedated before they go through surgery, right?
Yeah, it's
I mean,
obviously.
Holy shit! What a broad
But
brush.
a literal reading of this law makes flowers illegal because you could smell them and then it might make you feel happy. It's the worst piece of legislation in the world, but that's not really the point. The point is that they passed this awful legislation, and then all these companies were selling legal highs. They stopped selling them. They took them off shops' shelves. People weren't buying them in the newsagents anymore. And hooray, problem solved. People aren't doing drugs anymore. Guess what? They all started doing spice instead. Because actually, now that I can't get my high from the newsagents, I'll just go down to the crazy guy with the bricks. I'll ask him if he's got some. And he did. And it's made with God knows what.
That's
I'm sorry, but that's
honestly.
gotta be the lamest drug name I've ever heard.
I know.
Spice.
I mean, we're English, so we can't help it.
Someone in my
we
chat
had
asked if CBD is illegal in the UK.
CBD. Yes, it is. CBD oil and stuff like that.
Okay.
So they all turn to spice. They all turn to these drugs. And
What exactly is spice, if you don't mind explaining?
who the fuck knows? Honestly, it's impossible.
They don't know. They
So
don't
it's-
even know what like classification or what drug it's
It's
based
literally
off
just
of.
here's something that can get you high.
Yeah, it could be anything in it because you
It's
don't
the
know.
mystery
okay.
boxes of illegal drugs, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of like what methamphetamines was when it first came out. No one really knew what exactly
it's
it was.
synthetic.
We didn't call it meth. They called it like crystal meth and all these other crystal method and all these different names, euphemisms, and they had to kind of test it to find out that actually it's based on this this additive from cough syrup.
Yeah, it's specifically synthetic cannabinoids, which are fine by themselves, so long as you do it right. But the problem is that they're being sold on the high street by God knows who, and they put God knows what into it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have
That's always my biggest argument for legalizing and properly regulating drugs like this is, we would know what's in them, and
Yeah,
that's the best
that's the
thing
whole
in the
point.
world.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits to legalization.
Because-
Consistency in these drugs and knowing what's in them is hella important. That's how people don't die.
Yeah, because you have these people who are taking this shit, and it just not. I used to work in retail. I used to work in a shop, and we'd have people who take this drug, and then they just lie outside the shop, and they basically be still as a statue all day. Sometimes you'd call the ambulance if they weren't moving, and then the doctor would stand above them until eventually a police officer had to come, because basically they didn't want to move, but they also didn't want to be admitted into the hospital because then they'd possibly get in trouble. So they stay there as long as they could until the police officer arrived. But it really screws with people, especially in poorer towns, which is where I'm from. I'm from a poorer town, and yeah, when I was in the Netherlands, and I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it probably wasn't as common over there as it wasn't here, but you just didn't see stuff like that. You didn't see people who were like lying down, or just like staring into thin air for like 2 hours. You walk to the shops, you come back 3 hours later, and they're still there, because they can get, if you want to get high, you can go get high. I'm sure people still buy illegal drugs in the Netherlands. It's not like they made everything legal, there's plenty of drugs that aren't still. But when we're talking about something like cannabis, which doesn't seem to have like that bad effects anyway, you compare it to alcohol and the effects that alcohol can have on a person. It's kind of ridiculous how we treat it, but at least in the case of the United Kingdom, I don't think we'll ever legalize it, at least not at the moment, because of how our politicians are. Perhaps if America legalizes it, then we'll legalize it. So that means that in America, you've got to make sure that you legalize it on a federal level. So, get to it.
Well,
it's a states' right issue, right?
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
sorry.
God.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't do that. I just had to.
Yeah, I mean,
Honestly,
go ahead.
What I do want to talk about, in the U.S. at least, we have like different like tiers of how bad drugs are.
Oh, we do that here as well.
Yeah,
Schedule
we
1,
have,
Schedule 2.
Yeah, we have. Well, marijuana is the same on Schedule 1 with heroin.
yeah.
We rate it worse.
It depends
than,
on the
like,
state.
cocaine.
And
depends on the
heroin,
state.
honestly, could be with cocaine. Heroin
Yeah,
is
so
very
I'm just
deadly.
looking at the DEA right now, the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Yeah.
States might have their own individual things, but DEA still puts marijuana on the same like level of LSD and heroin.
Thanks for the follow, Level.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize I hadn't followed.
Yeah,
that.
thanks for following.
No,
I appreciate that.
But we have the same thing in the UK. We actually had this is during the Labour government, so this was the left wing government, so it's not just a right wing issue. This is under the Labour government. They considered whether they should declassify. Cannabis used to be classified as like a class B, which is kind of like the second tier one. And then the government decided to raise it because they decided that it would get them more votes. I think that was the reason.
Oh.
The early 2000s was a different time, okay? But yeah, they raised it to a Class A1. But this professor, his name was Dr. David Nutt, which is a great name for an independent expert on drugs. He wrote a
What was
report
his name?
about. I think his name was David Nutt.
David. Nice.
David Nutt.
That guy fucks. I'm sorry. Anyways, I got to throw something in to lighten the mood. I mean,
No, it's a good name.
it is.
His name was David Nutt, yeah, unironically. He wrote this report basically stating that there's no reason why cannabis should be as illegal as it is, and the government decided to dismiss him from his independent reporting job for the government because they didn't like his conclusion.
Well, I mean,
Sounds
that's not a new thing in the UK, right?
It's kind of bad because the point of having an independent researcher is that he gives you an answer that's independent. He doesn't just give you the answer that you want. But obviously,
and you said this was happening during the Labour Party.
Yeah, this happened under the Labour Party, Tony Blair, back when Tony Blair was PM.
Yeah, the Labour Party made a huge shift to the left only recently.
I thought most of the left people went to the Lib Dems.
Nah, it's a bit complicated. It'd take a bit to explain that, but
split down the basically split down the middle between the Green Party and the Labour Party, right? More or less. Long and short of it.
So like around about World War One and before World War One, we had two major parties.
Oh wow, we got to go back that far.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it won't take long.
Okay.
we had two major parties. One of them was the Liberal Party, and the other was the Conservative Party. After World War One, because of the trade union movement and all the trade unionists and the workers who suddenly got the vote, they basically created their own party, which was the Labour Party. And so the Labour Party became the party of trade unions, the Liberal Party is the party of spineless liberals, and the Conservative Party is the party of the aristocrats. So
The
basically-
Brexit just screwed that all up, right?
Well, basically, people realised that it's not fun to vote for Libs, so they started voting for the Socialists instead in the Labour Party. And the Labour Party eventually eclipsed the Libs. Then a bunch of shit happened. World War II happened. You know, who cares about any of that? Around about the
Just
1980s.
gloss over.
Little
Yeah.
thing.
Around about the 1980s, there's still a Liberal Party, but it's probably got about 5 people in it. A bunch of people, a bunch of kind of like right wingers in the Labour Party, kind of like centre left people. And they get upset about the direction that the Labour Party is going because of poor performance electorally. So they split away and they form their own party, which they call the Social Democratic Party. And then for a little while they do okay, but they don't really accomplish anything. And then they decide to enter a pact with the Liberal Party, and that's why we have a Liberal Democrat Party. So it's the party of people who basically don't hate gay people, but also don't want to spend too much money on poor people.
Nice. Nice description.
That sounds like the Democrats.
No, that's a really uncharitable description, but you know.
So what
I
happened
should
to
say
that one-
largely.
What happened to that one party that was trying to run recently, but they couldn't figure out a name for it?
The Independent Group for Change, the less you know about them, the better, honestly. I mean, it's like, there's a tale they won't tell you. what's the latest, the wisest?
You're
Yeah,
not
no,
talking about the guys that dress funny, or what? What was that? The Monster Party or whatever?
Monster Eating Looney Party. They've existed since like the 60s. They just stand joke candidates in elections.
Okay, so they're kind of like Vermin Supreme here. If you don't know,
Yeah.
look him up. He's
Oh,
basically Lord Buckethead too.
He's a
The
beautiful
point-
man.
Yeah, if you
Free
stand in an
ponies.
election here,
Ponies for everyone.
Mandatory toothbrushing.
Imagine if you could stand against the president in the United States, and then when they were announcing who won the presidency, you got to stand on stage next to the president, dressed however you wanted, and then all the cameras would see you and the president, and he'd be dressed like the president, and you'd be dressed like Darth Vader or whatever. That's basically what the Liberal Party.
Sounds worth it. I really like this idea.
Are your
Wow.
politics even real?
This is just what happens when you have a parliament and not like a presidency deciding.
Well,
stuff.
perhaps this is why we don't have marijuana, because it could get a lot worse. Who knows? But
Then
Look
bring it
out-
on.
Look at Canadian politics and you'll find a lot of the same things.
Well, I actually had a talk with my Canadian buddy last night, and he told me that they're in danger of basically heading far right wing in this next election.
Far right wing. What?
Yeah, Like-
okay.
yeah, like, well, imagine if the alt-right actually took over a major
Okay, well-
country. Well,
Let me-
besides Brazil, of course.
I think my definition of far right and your definition is different. Let me just So
Fascism.
are they asking for an ethno state? If they're not, then I'm not going to call them
I didn't ask him that, but he kind of alluded to the idea that they lean that way. They might not, the typical thing with like people who lean fascist is they don't outright say what they want. They kind of paint it in this direction, and
If they're saying they want, immigration controls, it seems like a lot of people who say they want immigration controls get painted as, alt-right under sun.
can I just say that like an ethno state made up of white Canadians would probably be one of the saddest things you could imagine.
I mean,
And sorry, I'm really distracting from the conversation now, but it just
their major cities have like a large Asian and Indian population. Actually,
Oh,
a
yeah.
buddy of mine just got married to an expat from Canada whose family is Indian.
yeah, in
he
fact,
goes to
one
Ontario all the time.
one of the political leaders are actually Indian. One of the major
I
ones,
just-
at least.
I'm just thinking like Can you imagine being like the white ethno state of Canada and being like, yeah, we'll celebrate the white culture of Canada of not going against the Queen, drinking maple syrup, or being polite to each other. It's really boring. Sorry, I know that's
Hockey
like,
wouldn't change in the least. Hockey would stay exactly the same.
yeah.
And I love hockey, but a lot of white people. Just a
Well,
lot.
what's that one movie, the Miracle or whatever? Like the movie about the United States winning against the Russians.
Oh, the Miracle on Ice?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that would be like the what changes in that movie. It's the fascist Canadians rather than the communist Russians.
Yeah, because they are a dynasty.
Yeah, the Canadians own a monopoly on ice skating. For sure.
Okay, so I just had someone chime in who's Canadian in my chat. Said I'm Canadian. There's a new party called the PPC, and they do want an ethno state. What does PPC stand for? If you can say it without
PPC.
me getting in trouble.
I came to pay per click.
So wait, is their names actual? Like we can't say their names right now?
Well, I don't know. I don't. Well, I mean,
Oh,
I don't know if it
People's Party.
translates to something weird.
I mean, again, me being a non-ethno nationalist, I realize a lot of nationalists in Canada are very left-leaning. So,
It's the People's Party of Canada.
Okay. Yeah.
People's Party of Canada.
Of course, they would choose a name like that. That's
That
what I'm talking
sounds
about.
very socialist, honestly.
It's fascist. They like to fascism likes to change names in that way. Like they will never call themselves what they are. Fascism is a politics of lies, distortion until you get power, and then well, we all know what happens next.
I don't think so. I've seen plenty of like people who have like the Nazi parties of America and all that, where they just clearly just state it out there.
Well,
I've yet to see the
if you talk to Richard Spencer, he's not a racist.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah. If you talk, I've seen videos of like interviews with KKK members, and they will claim we're not racist. We just believe in.
Yeah, an ethnic.
Yeah, that's
right?
so. It's almost amazing to me when they make that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't.
Yeah.
Again, it's not
like,
really.
It's gaslighting, like as a political platform.
Again, I'll never ask anyone if they're racist. I'll just ask. So, what do you think about an ethno state? If they say they're for it, then yeah, they're all right.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. It's not even just an ethno state. There's things in between that are heavily lean that way, and they even know at this point that saying that you're for an ethno state is not accepted in most circles.
I mean, I don't really agree on like things in between, because usually when people start adding, well, there's some in between that can still make you an alt-righter. Well, every now and again, my beliefs start mingling with that, and I don't want to be called an alt-right person because I don't hold like.
Just real quick, I don't mind changing the topic, but do all basically just agree on marijuana legalization?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Fair enough. I mean, I basically
we'd probably argue over how it was regulated, but it's not really worth having that conversation. It's kind of boring.
It's only worth it if someone actually believes it.
Yeah.
Say we can have that conversation when or if things start getting passed.
Yeah, I mean, like, we could have an argument about regulation. You'll say, oh, it should be regulated by United States police. I'll say, no, it should be done by the UK police. And